Welcome back to the Act 2 podcast, a podcast for the real-life working screenwriter. I am Tasha Huo.
And I am Josh Hallman.
And we are Act 2, a network and support group for the everyday, I wish I could sing because I'd sing this part, working screenwriter, of which the podcast is just one of our many initiatives. Thank you for joining us here. You can subscribe to the podcast, you can rate us, you can write a comment, you could DM us with questions, topic suggestions, follow-up questions about an episode that you have that we didn't get into, and you're like, why the hell didn't you talk about this thing? It seems so obvious. To get into that detail, just ask us, and we're at ActTwoWriters@gmail.com, all spelled out, or you can do that on our Instagram and Twitter at ActTwoWriters. I'm Story Thursday on Instagram and Tasha 3.0 on Twitter.
And I'm Joshua Hallman on Twitter, Josh Hallman on Instagram. I was just thinking as you were saying that, we are going to have on David Boxerbaum soon.
Yes.
We happened to get an email. Someone was asking us a few things about specs, and I wrote back and I said, we have the perfect guy coming on who can answer some of these questions. So if anyone has any questions for an agent, send them to us. We'll ask them.
Absolutely.
Do you have any this week's in writing, Tasha?
Sort of. Yes, I could.
All right, because I have one and I want to jump into it.
Okay.
This week in writing.
Okay, Tasha. As you know, I wrote a script called Rent a White Guy.
Oh, yes. This is... Okay, go.
So Rent a White Guy was this concept where a guy was broken up with and he was trying to escape all of his problems. And so he ends up going to China, where he signs up for a program that he poses as a businessman in these different Chinese companies. And all these companies need like a token white guy to kind of build some kind of American presence. And so it almost helped the company amongst fellow investors and stuff like that.
Which is based off of a real thing.
It was an article. And which the article was just the most fascinating thing. Just like, I couldn't believe it. And I turned it into an action comedy, of course, where the guy gets into some stuff a little too deep. There's a gang involved. There's all these different things. And it's kind of this, life lessons, things happen. He gets over his girlfriend. So I wrote the script. It was a spec. We got a producer, tried to take it out, tried to sell it. Ultimately, nothing happened with it. And not a lot of people like the concept. And people kind of, they always responded to it, but it was probably in hindsight, the script could have been a little better. So flash forward to just today. My friend sends me this photo, and he said, hey, didn't you write a script just like this? It's called Rental Family. It's with Brendan Fraser. It is about a actor living in Japan who gets hired and rented as a token white guy to pose in Japanese businesses. But it is an indie movie. It premiered at Toronto, or is going to premiere at Toronto.
It's like a family drama?
It's a comedy drama, and it has Brendan Fraser in it. And I was watching the trailer. I was like, oh my God. But you know what? This might have been the smarter way to do it. Maybe my movie was just a little too big. Maybe not.
Your movie was very fun.
Thanks. Thank you.
Because you sent this to me this morning, and this has happened so many times in our writing lives.
Yeah.
Where we've said to each other. It's usually you, because you have such good high concepts that every idea you have eventually gets made. Like, it's
Thanks.
you're just so good at it.
Appreciate it.
I think it's further proof. I mean, the silver lining is it's further proof that everyone was wrong, that concept is good and someone finally saw it. But that does leave room for your version if people are like, oh, because I also feel like at the time that you wrote it still felt like, that makes me a little uncomfortable. Like, it feels a little, but this movie is going to prove that it's okay because this is a real thing. You have the action version of that.
That was the first time I reached out to an author to get the rights and the article and all the things. And yes, this has happened a few times. This has happened with direct one-to-one. I mean, this is a little different, but the same concept. But again, just bringing it up, this stuff happens all the time, and it is very, very frustrating, especially when you write something that you really love, and then some people push back on it and they don't really like it. And then years later, you see the concept. It's very frustrating because you almost doubt yourself and wonder, oh, well, I guess my script probably wasn't good enough, or this or that. Or was it that you had the wrong people attached and the wrong people taking the script out and the people who didn't believe in it? I don't know the answer. I do know the answer. And
It's the latter.
yeah, I'm not wrong. It's not me. There's no way it's me.
No way.
So anyway, that's my This Week in Writing. Happy writing, everyone.
I don't know, man. Mine's not also great. Okay, so I was stuck on this scene in my script that I'm writing. And I had allotted myself like 3 days to write this scene because I knew it was going to be a tough scene. And it was a tough scene because it's a big action sequence. So it's a big action sequence where, character stuff happens because that's what action sequence should have. It should advance character in some way. And it was a scene where my hero and my antagonist sort of face off for the first time since the beginning of the movie. And someone very close to my protagonist dies. So a lot of stuff happens. And it's also like a key moment where my hero switches gears into a new gear that she then exists in for the second half of the movie. So a lot is going on in this scene character-wise. So I knew I needed some time to figure it out. And I couldn't do it. Every time I'd go to it, I'd write another paragraph and be like, it's fine. It's mostly boring. And then I'd stare at it for hours and I'd be like, I don't know what happens next. I don't know what's cool. Like, do I have the wrong setup because I need particularly cool weapons to show up, but that's not inherent in the scene that I've written, or maybe I'm just not smart enough to position them in the scene that I just couldn't figure it out, Josh. So I got real upset. And then I just skipped it because I have a deadline. And if I got stuck on this for days and days and days, I think it would ruin me. I think mentally I would be in a really bad place. And then I think obviously deadline-wise I'd be in a really bad place. So I just put in bold parentheses, action sequence here. And then I kept going. So I've started yesterday the revision process. So I'm going right back into my script, starting from the top. And blank page, just rewriting it with the open script next to me. And it's going well so far, but I know I'm going to hit that scene. And my hope is that I'm going to have developed the first section of this movie so well that when I get to this part now, I'm going to have a better understanding of what needs to happen. And with that energy, just plow through this scene is my hope. I will also say I didn't write the final action sequence of the climax either. I left that for this revision phase as well.
So 2 things. Number one, you've talked about this before and we've talked about this, but you just said you now have the blank page next to you. And your process is that when you're rewriting, you rewrite it, correct? Like your script and then you rewrite your own script.
I do, yeah.
Yes. Okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
Especially at this stage. I think when I get like really far down the line, I'll go in and make tweaks, but I prefer this because I can think better. It's almost like I'm writing it again and can feel like it puts me in the story more than if I almost feel like I'm back reading, like sitting back reading the script if I'm going in and tweaking it. And I don't feel like I am inside a scene. I feel like I'm outside just sort of like making little tweaks here and there and like editorial things. And that's not a good place to be on your second rewrite draft, in my opinion, at least for me in my process.
It is so helpful just to dive right back in. And then you make little tweaks, trim some areas, trim some fat.
Yeah, I've added more dialogue because I realized now that I'm in my second pass that this character that dies in that scene I was mentioning, she doesn't have enough meat early on where you like really care about her. So I need to give her more lines with my character. I need to give her more moments. So I've been doing that as well.
Okay. Then the other thing I was going to ask you is your hold up in the action sequences that there's just so much going on that it's almost as if you need a break to understand how to tackle it? Meaning all the characters are doing various things. How are you tracking their arcs? How are you cutting away? It's just like action sequences can be very overwhelming in that regard because you're having to think of so much, and placement of the characters and what they're going through and how, their actions are related to their character, and is this make sense? All the different things. Is that what's holding you up?
That's what's holding me up. I think it's the logistics of it. Actually, it's two parts. It's the logistics of how is she going to get the weapons in this location? How is she going to seem unique to the villain? Because the villain like attacks the place where my hero is, and she needs to meet him with the same energy, but like how he just did this huge splash to come onto the scene. Big explosion, and he's here calling out the hero. Like, what does the hero do that's equally splashy? Because that's her personality. So it's that practicality. And then it's also like in this sequence somewhere, my character has a breakdown, my hero. And I need to make sure I've built her up to this point, not only within this scene, which is the key crux of it, but also leading up to it, so that as an audience member, you're like, oh, I understand why this is her breaking point. And I think that was partly what was holding me back, because the first half is so rough. It's just a vomit draft. And so when I got to that scene, I was like, fuck, I don't know where she is emotionally well enough to like get her to the place I need to have her be in this scene. So it's two parts, two very difficult parts.
That's tricky. I think you're doing the right thing. You're going to get all the answers.
Yeah?
I think so.
Okay.
We can slingshot ourselves into the main topic because I'm kind of antsy.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Our main topic today is a sensitive one and a personal one. We are going to talk about the writing process of Red Sonja.
And exciting?
Sure. Red Sonja comes out on August 13th. And I know in Are You Excited we said August 15th, but that's how crazy the release of this movie has been, you guys, that within that short span of time, the release date has not only changed to August 13th, but it's now only one day. It's only one day. So instead of getting it for a couple weeks before it goes to streaming, we get it one day in theaters. So if you do want to see it, buy your tickets for August 13th. Otherwise, it will be on streaming starting August 29th. But we are here today to talk about the process as a writer. And I feel really passionate about talking about this because it is my first movie. And it seems like that is a topic that we need to discuss, like how that happens, how it functions, what does it look like, or what can it look like, right? Because every movie you're ever going to write is going to look and feel different, the process. So I felt like it was important as an educational experience to just talk about how this happened. So we're going to start from the top. You look scared. Are you scared?
No, I'm pretty excited to talk about this.
Okay. All right. I want to start with how I got the job.
Let's go. Let's start right here. Nice and positive.
So let me take you back to early pandemic. My reps find out that Millennium Films is looking for a writer on Red Sonja. Now, this is a property that they had been trying to develop for like a dozen years. The first sort of mention of it is Robert Rodriguez wanting to do it in 2008.
Damn.
And he at the time was developing a version starring Rose McGowan, which would have been pretty cool. But by the time 2020 came around, so that was already, 12 years later, they had different directors, different writers, different actresses attached to play Red Sonja. And when the project came to me, Joey Soloway was attached to direct. Joey Soloway, you know them because they were the showrunner of Transparent. And they had written a script that I had read. And Millennium Films wanted Joey to direct it, but they knew that the script needed some work. So Joey's script, clearly you could tell, came from a love of very particular parts of who Red Sonja was. And it was an incredibly feminist script. And I really enjoyed it for that reason. But I think then the reason that they needed to hire another writer was just to try to kind of coalesce all of the big ideas that Joey had into a story that could just function at its simplest form. Because at the end of the day, Red Sonja is a popcorn property. That's what it always was. That's what it's meant to be. So they really needed to, invest in Sonja, have you invest in her journey and create some logic to the world while also playing into these really big, really cool philosophical ideas that Joey had. So at the time I was told this is going to be a bake-off. Millennium is going to meet with like 10-ish writers, which that's still a lot, but they were reading dozens of samples and they were only going to choose like 10 people out of that. So at the time I read a bunch of the comics. Millennium sent me a ton they wanted me to pay attention to specifically, that they really wanted to set the world in, which is namely the Gail Simone comics, which were the main inspiration for the current iteration of the script that I had read. And I loved them. SONJA was obviously so freaking cool. I had, of course, watched the original Red Sonja movie with Bridget Nielsen back in the day. And actually, funny story, Josh, you remember this, years before this moment in time in the pandemic, like maybe 5 or 6 years prior to that, I was called in by Millennium Films to pitch on Red Sonja. And at this point in time, the exec at Millennium had been an assistant with me. And so we kind of grew up together. And I think he was kind of doing me a solid by bringing me into the room to try to pitch on Red Sonja. And I was super excited. I knew so much about Red Sonja. I had prepped so hard. I'd read all the comics. I pitched my heart out. And I pitched a story that I really, really loved, that I felt super emotional about. And I still remember the question at the end of my pitch. The very first thing that the exec said to me when I finished the pitch was, "What does her hair look like?" And I was like,
yeah, that's right.
What? After that, I was like, I didn't get this job. Like, if that's what the question you're asking me, it's not for me. That's fine. And then he asked me an even more embarrassing question. He was like, "So what do you really want to be writing? Like, not this shitty stuff. Like,
really?
What do you?" Yeah, and I could take that as like, this clearly isn't your sweet spot. What do you actually write? Or I could have taken it as him saying, "This property sucks. What do you really want to be writing?" I don't know. I don't know which one it was. It was one of those, though.
Oh, man.
But I didn't get that job. But I think a really interesting story is that the pitch that I created for that, I loved it so much that I ended up adapting it into my own movie. So I took away all the Red Sonja stuff that made it anything Red Sonja, but I took the themes out of it, and the story, which had never been part of a Red Sonja property, is just something that I had created on my own. And when I met my current manager, one of the first things she asked me was, "Do you have any projects that you absolutely love that no one else gets?" And I was like, this, it was started from a place of passion. It became this original movie. My agents don't like it. She read it and she was like, "Actually, I think there's a bigger world in here. Why don't you make it into TV?" But the problem is because it's this big fantasy thing, because that was its starting point with Red Sonja, she was like, "No one's going to buy it if it's not based on something. If they're going to have to spend millions of dollars on something, like even if it's public domain IP, right?" So, and I had gone to Oxford, and one of the courses that I really, really enjoyed was this King Arthur course. We read all the original source material for King Arthur and stories that we don't really know in mainstream media. And I was like, how about I like wrap it around that, because it really made sense for the story already. And thus Bloodborne was born, this pilot script that I eventually sold to Amazon that is now dead, but it was the first TV show I've ever sold. It's still my favorite sample, which I think is a good story, because technically you could say Red Sonja like got me that start in TV, really.
Yeah,
Helped me sell my first show. But cut to 6 years later, I'm pitching again on Red Sonja. This time, the execs are completely different. All the execs I'd pitched to before, including my friend, had left that company and gone on to someplace else. And this time, I was now pitching to rewrite a Red Sonja script that was already in existence. So my pitch was obviously completely new, completely different, because it was based on this Joey Soloway script. And something I really loved about Joey's script was that it had a lot of humor in it, as well as this, action and epic world building stuff. And like one example is Sonja's relationship with her horse was really important in the story. And as someone who grew up with horses, I was like, I want to lean into that relationship. I love that a lot. Let's make that not cheesy. Let's make it really fun and sweet and emotional. And there's elements of that in the movie as well, which is really cool that it stayed in there. And my pitch, just to talk about process, because it was pandemic, is 2020. It was over Zoom. I shared my screen, and I also made this pitch deck that was just all pictures. There's no words at all, just all pictures. And they loved it. And shortly after that, I heard that I won the job. I beat out those other, 9 other writers.
Let's go.
And yeah, it was great. It was huge. It was my first big movie. It was a huge property. It kind of became my big break, I think. It wasn't technically my first paid movie in the industry. I worked on 2, maybe 3 movies before that. But this was an actual property. Like me and my agents could go out into the world and be like, oh, Tasha's working on Red Sonja. And people be like, oh, I understand what that is, right?
Yeah, that's a big deal.
It's a big deal. So, okay. So I got the job. That's act one of the story. Break into two.
It's like I have questions, but I'm just letting you go. I just want you to.
Are you sure?
Absolutely. I'm just sitting here drinking my water, nursing my injured arm. I'm ready.
All right. Break into two. Tasha has the job, and she's now meeting with Joey. Just about like, those meetings were fun because they were my first meetings with a director, I think, at that point. I had a couple meetings before that with a director, and it was great because we talked about what they cared about the most, what they saw for the movie, what they'd love to see work better in the movie. And I think, to their credit, Joey really had no ego about what was their script and what I was going to put into it. And Joey's also a producer on the movie, so they just did a really great job at like, I know you're being hired to rewrite it. And I loved your pitch, and I want you to do with it what you need to do to make it work. I'm just here to help guide with things, A, with my experience, but B, that I think would be really cool moments in a movie. So that was really cool to sort of work with them. So after a few meetings like this, I went off to write. And for movies, you typically get, for the WGA, you typically get like 12 weeks to write it. So I turned it in, I got a round of notes, and the notes process was very interesting because also for the first time in my career up to that point, I got notes from like a dozen people, some of whom I had never even seen before in my life. Like, didn't know their names, didn't know they were even on this movie, what part of the company, or even if they were in a company, didn't know. But their names were on this notes document, sending notes. And that's why Josh and I emphasize the skill of learning to take notes and interpret notes and execute notes, like why we take that so seriously, because a lot of writers, and I've seen it happen, get to this point in a script on a job, and they're not able to execute notes. And it is not only like the skill of executing notes, but the skill of being able to understand the note behind the note, to take notes that are from various people who, many of which don't know anything about writing, trying to give you solutions and trying to see your way through that as a writer. Please everybody, but also be true to the script. Like, it's a lot of plates to juggle, and it is a skill that you hone over time. So that's where I was at.
And when you got that document, do you remember how you felt? Were you overwhelmed?
I was really intimidated. I thought, the very first thought that crossed my mind was, holy shit, how am I going to manage all these different people and their different expectations?
Right.
Because Joey had very different creative expectations, and the producers had more practical expectations, and other people, I think, just wanted to say something about the script. And it's not like anyone was wrong, but some people, not every note could get hit and create the same movie, right? Create the most coherent movie. So some notes had to not get hit. And which notes from which person do you decide don't get hit? And then how do you express to that person in a way that makes them understand and not be defensive, that their note is not going to make it in? And sometimes you don't have to address it. Sometimes you address it by not addressing it and they just never notice. Sometimes you have to address it.
Yeah.
And one example of a battle I fought, just to sort of get into specifics, because that's always helpful, I think, was that Joey in particular really wanted a specific weapon in the movie. But it was a weapon that was like not iconic to SONJA or like really any of her iterations in the comics or the movie, but was something that Joey like really loved the visual of and thought it was a very cool thing. But B, I think, and more importantly to me, was that the weapon wasn't like good for her character. It wasn't right for her character. It didn't make her really intimidating. It wouldn't allow her to fight in the way that she fights in the comic. It wouldn't allow like what we call like the silhouette of her, like the look of her, also how she behaved in the movie. Like, it would affect all of these things. It had this cascading effect. But Joey was really passionate about this weapon idea. And I think the producers were kind of like, we don't care that much. like this is not a battle we want to have to fight, but we also don't want it either. But if Joey really feels passionate about it, that's fine. Joey's the director. But I felt, and maybe this was just something I put on myself, I felt like we all knew this was not right for the character, and it was up to me to fight why.
Sure.
So I and again, to Joey's credit, I just kind of explained what I just said, like that all the consequences that this would have to the story and to the character, and why I didn't think it was right, but that maybe we could bring her idea in, which was a very cool idea, bring it in a different way rather than it being like the main thing. And to their credit, they were like, yeah, that's great. I was like, oh.
So you offered a solution to the problem.
Yes.
Was that done over a meeting?
Yes.
I'm only asking this because I know there's different ways. Sometimes people just get their notes and they go with God. Sometimes people get their notes and they respond to the document of how it's going to be accomplished. And then other times they get their notes and they have a meeting. Like it sounds as though that's something you did. And you go through all the notes and how you're going to tackle it and what's working, what's not working, and how you feel about it.
Yeah. In this case, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, because this was so long ago, I got a notes document and then we hopped on a call on a Zoom afterwards and went through the document, which to me, like, I love and hate that process because it feels like when you get it ahead of time, there's a pressure for you to have the solutions by the time you have that Zoom, like the next day. Whereas if you're doing it in the room, I can be like, oh, I don't know yet.
It's totally bullshit because if you don't have a solution to the problem, they just assume that it's the right note. You're like that's the way I feel about it, is that if you can't kind of address how to accomplish their note, or if you disagree with it and you're like, I disagree with it, and they're like, well, what's the solution? You're like, well, I got to think about it.
Oh, and then they're like, well, because you don't know the answer, obviously it's not correct. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. I don't like that. That's maybe what anyway.
No, it's complicated. I think there are pros and cons to both. I also don't like being blindsided by a notes document the day of in the meeting when everyone else knows what the notes are. Like, I don't like that either. It's just never good. No me gusta notes.
Okay.
So again, it didn't end up being this huge conversation, which is what I expected, which was great. So there were a lot of things like that throughout the notes process that we would kind of have to go battle against, kind of like detail by detail, making sure things were right, making sure Joey agreed with it, as well as the producers, what's right for the character, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the notes process, which I think is fairly unique because it was an IP. This is a different process for different ideas and different projects, right? Then at some point in this process, Joey ended up dropping out of the project as a director, which is, I just got a phone call and was just told that this was happening, but that they were staying on as a producer and that there was no bad blood. I still, of course, wonder if, like, did they hate my revisions? Is it my fault?
Is it because they didn't have the thing,
weapon?
the weapon to silhouette her body?
Yeah. But then after Joey left, they were like, well, fuck. We kind of have to move this movie sort of a little bit more away from Joey's very specific vision and more towards a bigger popcorn movie, because now we don't have Joey to execute that idea. So we're going to have to get a new director. We can't have these like very specific Joey ideas in the script. So now my task was to kind of just ground the movie more, still keep really big thematics that were really working, but make it less philosophical and kind of more of this big action movie genre piece. And that was the sort of like second part of my job in terms of the revision process. And at some point, Hannah John came on to be Red Sonja, which I was really excited about. I thought it was a really interesting choice. I never met her. It wasn't really my job. It's not my piece in the puzzle, I guess. But it's always an amazing feeling as a writer to learn that an actor of that caliber has read your script and she loved it and was in. But I was left out of that process. And then eventually the producers had their script. I was done with the revisions. They're like, thank you so much, Tasha. Now it's time for us to go produce this thing. That means they had to go get a director. They had to get the financing. They had to get the cast, the locations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Basically all the practical parts of turning a bunch of pages of nonsense that Tasha wrote into a moving picture, right? And I went on to do other things and I kind of forgot about it because that's not my job to produce this movie. It's just to get you a script that you can produce. So every now and again, because this was back in 2020, every now and again, I'd email my agents, be like, hey, have you heard anything about Red Sonja? Is it getting made? Is it dead? What's
Yeah.
happening? And they'd always say, nope, silence, don't know. Until one day they said, yeah, MJ Bassett is actually directing this thing. And they're shooting in Bulgaria. And I remember you and Dave, friend of the podcast, asked if I was going to be going to Bulgaria to watch filming, because that's what Dave did when his first movie got made. He went to Italy, and it was like the greatest time of his life. But I was like, I wasn't invited, so I'm not going.
She did bad revisions.
Yeah. We all hate her.
No.
But also, like, I think I was really genuinely busy doing other things. And I was like, I don't know if I can get away, but am I going to miss out? But again, I wasn't invited. So I feel like I would have been, I don't know, like this. I don't know what the good metaphor is. The third wheel.
The fifth wheel. But you know what? What was crazy about this is I remember when this was going on, and maybe this is just you in general, but you just casually kind of be like, yeah, and then we have a director, and we'd be like, wait, what? And just very confused about it. It was during a time when the world was in a weird place, and it was just a blur. It just, everything all about that, like that time period was such a blur. But I do remember the nonchalant nature in which you would deliver very important updates of, oh, we have this, oh, did you see this Deadline article? We have the actress in it. I'm like, wait, what? Like, you wrote this? Wait, Red Sonja? What? And you just never talked about it. It just kind of appeared, and then anyway.
It's funny because like my interpretation of it is, because I'm like you, Josh. I don't really like to share things that go on in my life, good or bad. Like I just don't. I don't. So when I actually feel like I tell you guys too much, I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, I don't know. Just, do they even care about this thing that just happened?
Of course.
I'm going to tell them anyways, because Paul's trying to make me mentally healthy and tell my friends things.
Well, I get it. I'm the same way. Trust me. If someone understands, it's me.
You in particular, you're worse than me. Like, it'll slip out that this like amazing producer and actors attached to your thing, and I was like, when did this happen?
Let's get back to Red Sonja.
Okay.
Don't turn this on me.
So, speaking of not telling people things, I didn't even know the script was greenlit or it was shooting. So I found out because I had my agents hound the production company, and I learned that they were off in Bulgaria. And then I think, just like everyone else, I was getting updates on Instagram whenever the director would post images or videos of her day on set. And it was just the coolest thing ever, to be honest. I remember I was just like saving pictures from the set that she'd post, and I'd like send them to you guys. Like, this is so fucking cool. And I would like try to guess which part of the script they were in. And then one day, one of the actors on the movie on set posted a picture of her script on Instagram. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. And it said, Red Sonja, written by MJ Bassett, based on a script by Tasha Huo.
Oh.
And I remember thinking, but that's not a credit. Based on a script by? That's not a credit. What does that mean? Is it a credit? Did I not write Red Sonja anymore?
Yeah.
And so I sent it to my agents. I was like, did I get rewritten? Like, what's going on here? Because I, again, was like so proud of this movie. And it turns out I had been rewritten, that the director, and this happens all the time, right? The director wanted to make the movie her own, as it were. And so the Millennium Films actually hired MJ Bassett to do a pass on my script, and which is fine. Again, that happens all the time, especially to get it in a place where the director's like, now this feels like my own. Now this feels like the thing that I can direct. So really, like, honestly, like, no big deal. That happens. And the producer told me that don't worry, like, it's mostly your script. It's just it now like has the director's signature in it. So not to worry. It's like still the same story and structure.
Pause. When the producer told you that, was that through your agents, or was that because you knew the producer and you reached out to the producer?
That was me talking directly to the producer, because I think we had a good relationship. We still have a good relationship. And I think because my agents were poking at it, he gave me a call.
I got you.
And let me know that. Yeah.
Okay.
So of course I was bummed because, various reasons. Bummed that I wasn't told when it happened. Bummed that people felt like my script wasn't good enough to be the thing that was ready to go. Like, so much so that they had to hire her to rewrite it. It wasn't just like, I'm going to tweak little things here. Like, she got in and rewrote it. And then all this time I was seeing images from set and like guessing which part of my story it was. And it wasn't even my story. So I kind of like was still paying attention, but like not as emotionally invested in that stuff. I know it was a bummer. And then SONJA was done shooting and it went into arbitration. And this is very normal. Arbitration is what happens when a movie is done, basically, right? When the WGA decides, all right, who's getting the final credits on this movie? And I was told, again, that this is pretty standard for just any movie that gets made, because almost any movie, especially a studio movie like that, not like an indie movie that's made by like 5 people, is going to just have multiple writers at some point. And this one obviously had been in the works since 2008. So the WGA needed to go in and decide, okay, who are the people who deserve the credit for this movie? And this is where being a writer, to me, gets really interesting and in ways that like you could never have predicted or been told in school. Because mind you, like my knowledge of the history of this movie was that it had been going on for years, but that the draft that I read of Joey Soloway's, that was a totally new direction, right? It was a totally new draft, totally new execs, totally new everything, clean break. I was never told about any other writers that came before Joey, nor was I told if Joey's script was based on other people's scripts or ideas, or if they'd met with other writers, like nothing. I was just told this is it. So when we get into arbitration, I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be between me, Joey, and MJ battling for this credit. Maybe Joey will probably get story by. I'll share credit with MJ if I'm lucky, and that'll be that. And so the arbitration process starts. Break into 3. Midpoint? Yeah, break into 3. Midpoint is finding out I got rewritten.
Yeah, I think this is we're breaking into 3 here.
Break into 3, arbitration process starts, and the arbitration paperwork comes in. And what it does is it lists all of the writers that the producers say have worked on this movie. And guys, there were like a dozen names.
You're like, Dave Levinson.
Yeah. Yes. None of these writers did I know their names. I didn't know anybody. And these people somewhere before me had won this job just like I did. They were probably so excited just like I was. Their life became the script just like it was mine. They got notes. They executed those notes. And then another writer was hired. So that by the time it got to me, I didn't even know their name. That's bad.
Yeah.
But it's such a crazy part of this process.
Somewhere there was other writers who were thinking, wait a minute, this is my script. They're making this movie. I wrote that script 12 years ago.
Josh, what if there is someone else watching those Instagram posts by MJ Bassett being like, what scene of my movie is this?
I totally think that's the case, right? Or maybe not.
It's like such a mind fuck.
It's hard to think about. Because I think writers would think that. Yeah, I think you would think to yourself, wait, I wrote something a long time ago, fizzled away. It's the same producers, right? Mm-hmm. Then, yeah, you're looking at these stills.
Like, it's they probably did passes since me, but
yeah, that's my movie.
Me. Yeah,
that's crazy.
A quick story about this, because I think this is a cautionary tale that's worth talking about for writers that I just like was never made aware of until it happened to me multiple times. So I once had a general at a company, and the exec said to me, I have a really cool idea. It's crazy. And I don't know what the movie is. And it's a live action fairy movie. And the fairies are badasses, and they're really, really cool.
Oh, wow.
In a way that we've never seen them before. And I was like, yes. Yes, thank you. This is exactly what Tasha wants to be doing with her life. And so I came up with a pitch. I pitched on it. I got the job. And when it came to doing the deal, that's how long it took to get to the stage. Was making the deal. And this was after several meetings, several pitches. And my reps go, oh, this is a rewrite? And I was like, what? Apparently, someone else had written a script based on this idea from the company. They fired that person, but they still loved the idea and wanted to make it work. And instead of telling me in any of our numerous meetings, hey, there's another script. This is what it's based on. You should check it out. We want to go in this other direction, but this is what it was. they brought it up in the deal-making process as a way to basically say, we are not paying Tasha the going rate of an original screenplay, which is a lot more. We're paying her the going rate of a rewrite, which is markedly less. And I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, because you just came up with a brand new idea. They just had the concept. Right.
Yes, exactly. And the producer's like, oh, but Tasha, don't you remember? In one of our meetings, I said, there's a script of this, but we don't want you to read it because your idea is so much better and so much more creative. And I was like, well, yeah, but it's because you said I didn't have to read it that I assumed this was an original because I literally never read it. Therefore, it is an original. It's not
man.
like this idea wasn't. So this is all to say this happens all of the time. OK, and I want other writers to know about it so that you can ask about it and be aware of it and talk about it and be upfront when you're having this discussion, because you don't want to get to the arbitration process and learn that, oh, there were 12 other writers and I had no idea.
I know we want to move on from this, but did you know any of the other writers?
No.
Did you know of them personally or just?
No, I've never seen their names before.
Interesting.
And they even say there's like very strict rules in the arbitration process. Like you're not supposed to talk to the other writers. And no, I didn't know any of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Back to Red Sonja. I get this arbitration paperwork, see all these writers that came before me who I'm sure were awesome. And during arbitration, you are meant to compare your draft of the movie that you wrote, the final draft of whatever you wrote, with the final shooting script that the company submits. They're saying, this is what we shot, word for word, and now you compare. So I read MJ Bassett's shooting script, and then I reread my script, which I hadn't read in years. So it was super weird. And this was a really odd thing because my scenes were basically in the MJ Bassett movie, right? They occur pretty much where I put them. The structure was basically mine. The characters were all the same, even though many of their names had changed, like their general personality traits and their general purpose in the movie remained the same. All of the dialogue was different. The blocking of the characters in the scene, sometimes even like the thematic purpose of that character in the scene was different. I think only like 2 of my dialogue lines from the script actually made it into the movie. And oftentimes even like the stuff you don't see, just like the action lines were just worded differently. And it was the trippiest thing because you're reading the shooting script and you're like, well, it's my movie, but it's absolutely not at all even close to my movie, but it's my movie.
Right.
Like I don't even know how to tell the arbitration committee what to do there. Right. So like, once you do this step in arbitration, you read it, you mark what's different, you mark what's the same, and then you basically answer a series of questions and you kind of write a letter. You don't kind of, you do. You write a letter that answers a series of questions, which is like in paragraph form. Why do you think the dialogue is yours, or why do you think the dialogue is not yours? Why do you think the structure is yours, and why is it not yours? But the WGA has worked incredibly hard in the past to protect writers from exactly this situation of being rewritten by directors or being rewritten by the studio head's best friend from college, right? To even share a credit on a movie as a writer, you have to change something like 33% of the movie, of the previous script. So according to the arbitration committee, just changing dialogue, just changing character names does not count as part of that 33%. And if you want to go back, we did an earlier episode a while ago about arbitration with Dan Kunka, as well as myself, about our different processes. And you can get more into what the arbitration process is like in those episodes. But here, in this case, my thinking was, here in this process, what the WGA's thinking was because just because you change what Red Sonja says in a scene doesn't mean the character of Red Sonja doesn't exist in the scene the same way or isn't
intent.
The intent is exactly the same.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting to learn that that's what the 33% meant.
Wow.
So like, for example, there's a fighting pit scene and I had that in my script. In my script, Red Sonja had to kill another woman in the fighting pit. She's appalled by the barbarity of these supposedly civilized people who are watching
spoiler alert. My God.
There's a spoiler alert. And then she uses the battle to kind of, there's a big set piece with her gladiator friends that she just met. So those scenes still exist in the same particular order, but what happens in them is, I guess, 32% different.
Sure.
It's 32% different. But it's there. It's that scene. So long story short, or maybe long story long, I remember sending my arbitration appeal letter and being like, okay, shared credit. And then I get a response back in like a couple days being like, nope, you get sole credit. Congratulations. No story by.
Congratulations.
No shared. Yeah. Congratulations. So, guys, this is why I wanted to tell this story. Because this isn't even a unique story, I don't think. I think this is a common story.
I think so too.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
when I found this out, I immediately told a couple friends of mine, and they're like, oh, Tasha, I mean, it's amazing you got any dialogue at all. 2 lines? Congratulations. Most people have their movies get made and none of their lines are in the movie. I was like, what? Are writers just walking around having this happen to them and not talking about it?
I wonder if that is the case, actually, because people want to have their movie, have their TV show, or have whatever it is, and say, I did this. And especially if it's good, this was mine. But at the same time, if everyone's getting rewritten or things, it's improv or, it's just the intent. Like, when you see those, there's an Instagram page where it shows the script scrolling down the page and then it shows the actor doing the dialogue from the movie. It's always changed. It is, the words are added. It's just, things are different. You're kind of like trying to follow along. Sometimes it's the same, obviously, but it's crazy, man.
Yeah. In that case, though, there's something there is something that's like, oh, that's a bummer. They didn't say the line that they came up with their own. That's just like your ego talking there.
Right.
But that person could not have ad-libbed to become that great line without you having built the character foundation for them to build on. So in some ways you are working with that person to come up with that. So, I mean, and that's kind of the fun of movies. The beauty of it really is that fun. But
no, by the way, I agree with like an actor taking over and saying, I didn't feel this right here. Unless you're Quentin Tarantino and you're saying everything is my line, don't deviate from the script.
Sorkin.
But Sorkin, of course. But I understand if your character's in the moment, you get slapped and you want to react differently than what's in the script. That makes sense.
And we always talk about that too on the podcast, just like how fun it is to collaborate, and that's what's fun about the movie. But it's this interesting, I just want to talk about this because I feel so mixed about this movie coming out, and a lot of people are like, this is so amazing, Tasha, when are we going to do a screening? And I'm like, it's not my movie. They're like, but your name is on it. And I was like, I know. I don't know. I love this movie. I'm very passionate about it. I'm very proud that it exists. But it is this really interesting mixed bag of like joy and pride and gratitude and also like emptiness, and humiliation and like sadness. And it's all just like wrapped into one. And it just felt important to talk about because I think the vision we have for how our movies will go isn't the way it is. And it still is the dream. Like seeing this movie on the big screen is still going to be a part of this huge, amazing dream that we have.
Right.
Even though it's not the way you imagine it in your head. And I think this is me talking to myself. Like, it's important to remember that like little child Tasha her mind would be blown that this is even possible.
We're going to celebrate it.
Yeah.
You're in the perfect spot because if it's great, it's yours. If it's not as great as you want it to be, hey.
Directors.
It's not your dialogue.
Didn't do it.
So we're going to celebrate Red Sonja. This is a huge accomplishment, and I hope everyone listening celebrates it as well.
Me too. Go have fun at the movies and see this bonkers movie.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my Red Sonja TED Talk quote of the day.
That was awesome.
I don't focus on what I'm up against. I focus on my goals, and I try to ignore the rest. Venus Williams. I'm only going to do sports people now.
Hell yeah.
Please remember to rate and subscribe. Follow us at ActTwoWriters for more awesome writing stuff. You can follow me, Tasha Story Thursday, on Instagram or on Twitter at Tasha 3.0.
I'm Joshua Hallman on Twitter, Josh Hallman on Instagram.
And as always, the Act Two podcast is a production of Act Two, a network and support group for the everyday working screenwriter. This episode is edited by Paul Lundquist.